Welcome to the A.L.I.V.E Active Shooter Survival Training Program, where the experts break down active shooter incidents to discuss and assess each event to help you stay alive. This is your host, security expert and creator of the A.L.I.V.E Active Shooter Survival Training Program, Michael Julian.
Welcome to the next edition of the A.L.I.V.E Active Shooter Survival Training Program podcast. My name is Michael Julian. I'm the creator of the A.L.I.V.E program. And with me today are my co-hosts and friends, Mark Gillespie, who's a investigations and forensic expert out of Texas, and Lawrence Borgens, who is also a investigator and a security expert out of Central California, Northern California?
Mostly northern.
Mostly northern. Also with us is our special guest, Matt Klock. Matt has been a longtime friend of mine. He's been in the security industry most of his adult life. We became friends years ago while studying for the as-is designation of personal security expert or specialist. And we've been friends. We live in the same town, so we do things socially and professionally as well. Today is a very significant day. It's October 1st, 2 years after the Route 91 Music Festival shooting in Las Vegas. And Matt is a survivor of that event. He was there on that day. It has been a very intense, profound, emotional situation for him. And because we're friends, I know how it has affected his life since that time. So it's a very significant day, and Matt is a very significant guest for those reasons. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about that event. For anyone who may not be familiar with that event, on October 1st, 2017, at a concert, it was actually a weekend festival concert, country music concert called the Route 91 Music Festival. And it was not at Mandalay Bay, but near Mandalay Bay. And it was a kind of an all weekend thing. It was this event happened just after 10 o'clock on Sunday night. And what happened was a single gunman, 64-year-old man. And we don't typically like to glorify these people, so we don't often use their names. But if I do, which I will today, I will put my personal input in, which is the man's name was Stephen Paddock, and he was a coward, and he was a horrible person who we still don't know what his motives were, which is unusual. Typically we know these things, but we don't know exactly, have not determined why he did what he did. He was a millionaire. According to his family, there weren't any obvious signs of suicide or homicidal behavior. He really didn't have the typical behavioral characteristics or life issues that most of these people have when they do these unbelievably terrible events. But on the night of October 1st, Stephen Paddock took several guns, which he had been taking up to his room for 2 days, even with the help of hotel staff in Mandalay Bay, which we've seen on video, hotel video, and set up a very intricate environment to where he could carry this act out. Some people believe that his intention was to escape. He did end up committing suicide once law enforcement figured out where he was and cornered him. He had set up 2 cameras on a room service card outside his room so he could see activity outside the room. He got 2 adjoining suites on the 33rd floor and knocked out windows. It was in a corner, so he knocked out a window on each side of that corner and started shooting into the crowd at the festival. 58 people ended up losing their lives that day, and over 500 people were injured. One of my former students also was a participant, and we've heard her story and talked about her previously on this. She was a survivor and credits the A.L.I.V.E program with her survival. But today we're going to talk to Matt and ask him to tell his story. It is a very emotional thing for him, I know, because we've talked about it many times offline in personal settings. And I think one of the important takeaways for this situation is how deeply affected even the survivors are, not just the family members of the people that were killed, but the survivors of these events that were just there. And so what I just want to do is ask Matt to tell his story, and we'll interject with questions when we need to. But Matt, I'd like to turn it over to you. Thank you very much for being on this show today. I know it's a very, very difficult time for you. It is the anniversary of the shooting exactly 2 years ago. So if you wouldn't mind, just kind of walk us through your story and tell us what happened.
Well, thank you, Michael. I appreciate it for having me on the show. You just telling the recap of that a night was already getting me emotional. You know, when you go to an event like a concert, you don't think anything's going to happen. Like Michael said, I've been in the security industry for 24 years. I've gone through active shooter trainings. I've participated in a live reenactment of active shooter training. I've been through classroom settings. And the idea that this would never happen to me was always there. It's like, wouldn't happen to me. So on Sunday night, October 1st, 2017, as the headliner was on stage performing, myself and a group of others were enjoying our night in Vegas. And at 10:05 p.m., we heard the sounds of pop, 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 pop. And we all kind of looked around, and I looked behind my shoulder and looked up in the sky thinking that it might be fireworks or pyrotechnics or something was happening behind us. At that moment, my girlfriend was to my left. She saw somebody fall down. And I was with two other friends at the time, Nick and his wife, Kim, and they were to my right. And Nick immediately knew what was happening and said, "That's gunfire, everybody down." We immediately went down to the ground, and I covered Tammy and Kim, Nick's wife, and Nick took off running. He took off running to the right, which was towards Mandalay Bay. At this point, we don't know anything that's happening. We don't know where this is coming from. All we continue to hear is the pop, 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 pop sound, and then the metal or the bullets ricocheting off of the metal guardrail and the stage in front of us. Nick takes off, nowhere to be seen at that moment. And I'm on top of both Tammy and Kim, and they start to become hysterical. At one point, the sounds of the gunfire, again, now we realize that there's gunfire. My thought process was, there's somebody in the venue. There's somebody in the venue. There's a fight. There's somebody's in the venue shooting at us. Or we're just happen to be potentially innocent bystanders in a maybe domestic or into a fight or something happening. I don't know. So my thought process was, let's just stay down. Let's just huddle together. We'll stay down, we'll stay still, and this will all go away soon. There was cops everywhere. I could not imagine that this was going to take that long to subside. As I'm laying on top of both the girls and they start to cry and yell at me, I heard the gunfire stops. I kind of stand up a little bit and I kind of look around, and I look behind me, and in the field, I can see people running, and I can see people huddling over other people. And there was someone right behind me. I was down on the ground. And like all I could see was people around him trying to administer CPR or pushing compressions on him. I was maybe 10 seconds and then the gunfire erupted again. And we all got back down and huddled together. And at this point, Kim, Nick's wife, is yelling at me and hitting me on my chest to go get Nick. Tammy grabbed her cell phone out of her purse and was calling her son. And I was telling her, hang up the fucking phone. Be quiet. Hang up the phone. And she's talking to her son. When the gunfire stopped for the third time, Kim was begging me to go get Nick. So I was on my stomach and I crawled as far as I could, and I was crawling over people. When I finally saw Nick, he was wearing a hat backwards, a Cleveland Indians hat that he had just bought that night, and I recognized it. So I saw him. He was actually with two of our other friends who, before the main headliner started, they had moved up and to the right, closer to the stage. So I saw him, and he was actually with both of those two girls that were there, and both of them had been hit. One was hit in the arm, the other one was hit in her face, in her eyes. We heard gunfire erupt again, and at that point, I could actually hear the sound of the bullets passing by our heads. At one point, I was covered with Nick and the two girls, and I was covering my ears because I could hear it whizzing by. I told Nick, I said, we gotta go back, we gotta go back. Kim wants you back. So he told the people that were with the other two girls to take care of them, and he would come back for them. And we crawled back over to where the other two girls were at. Nick huddled us together and said, there's going to be a time when there's no more gunfire, it's going to be quiet, and we're going to jump over this guardrail, and we're going to crawl across the stage, and we're going to jump over that other barricade, and we're going to leave. He knew the plan, and we were going to follow his lead. At that moment, again, gunfire erupted. We huddled together, all four of us. And again, at this point, it was so loud. The sounds of screaming, people crying, yelling, the sounds of the gunfire. The bullets were just ricocheting off the ground, and it sounded like it was just explosions all around us. I covered my head and my ears, and I was kind of huddling over the two girls, and Nick was kind of over top of me. And at that moment, I was thinking, we're not going to make it out of here. But I knew I needed to be strong. I knew I needed to do this for my son and my family. And I wasn't going to die on that ground. And as soon as it stopped, the gunfire stopped, we jumped up. Tammy was literally paralyzed and wouldn't move. I had to grab her by her shoulders, and I had to lift her up over the guardrail and drag her down to the ground. We crawled around the stage area and into what they call the catwalk area of between the stage and the soundboard. And while we were there, we encountered a bunch of people that had been shot. And we stopped to try to help somebody who was bleeding. And Nick introduced himself to another military guy and said, "Hey, I'm a Marine." And he said, "Me too." And he said, "This guy is gone. We can't save him. We got to keep moving." We jumped over the second set of guardrails and we ran to an empty parking lot in front of an apartment complex. We could still hear the screams and people yelling and people running. At this time, it's probably 15 minutes had gone by. It seemed like forever. Nick said, "I got to go back. I got to go back and find the girls. I'm not going home without them." Nick, he's a Marine, retired. His wife was begging him not to go. I told Nick he's got to do what he's got to do. I'll take care of the girls. He said he ran back in. He said that he was running past SWAT members as they were kind of in the prone position and kind of staging themselves in the area. He was running past them as they were running, as they were staged. And he said it was kind of a surreal moment. He's running in and they're just kind of standing there. But the happy part of this story is that as he was running back into the venue, he was able to meet up with another one of our friends. Miraculously found her hiding in a basement of a hotel someplace around the area. I think it was the Tropicana or something, and they were able to meet up. And we ran to the Hooters Hotel about 3 blocks away, and we were sequestered inside of the Hooters Hotel for 6 hours. All we were doing was watching the news. And at about 6:30 in the morning, they finally let us leave the hotel so we can go back to our hotel. And I've never seen Vegas so quiet. Not a car on the street. Nobody walking around. It was like the end of the world had just happened and we were the only ones left on it. It was the scariest thing I've seen in Vegas for a long time. And to have an opportunity to talk to other people about this situation. And whenever I do my presentations and talk about this, I always kind of leave it off by saying, if somebody can take away one thing from my story, is that always be aware, always be vigilant, know what your surroundings, know what you're going to do in any situation, have a plan, talk to your family members, your friends, because you just never know when it's going to happen. I wear this bracelet. Been wearing this bracelet for 2 years. And it says "Country Strong, Route 91. And I haven't taken it off as a reminder that there's 58 other people that don't have a voice today. But I want to be a voice for them and lift them up and hopefully help others to know that we're strong together. Love wins. And as survivors, we're in this together.
Thanks, Matt. Well, that was a that was a very emotional story, and I certainly felt it. I'm sure the other guys and the viewers will too. Um, I appreciate I appreciate you being willing to talk about it, and I can tell that it's not difficult. I hope that this somehow helps the healing process, to talk about it. I want to go back to a couple things you said that immediately resonated with me, and I think is important to highlight because of how it fits into helping other people survive in the future. And if we can take anything away from these situations, um, you know, I think it's good that we take away lessons learned to avoid to avoid this type of thing, or at least to mitigate the death toll, and to help people survive. You stated that, you said to yourself, or you were thinking, I'm not going to die today on this ground. And that is something that we highlight and push emphatically in the A.L.I.V.E program, is that survival mindset. You have got to overcome the paralysis of fear, overcome the thought that you're going to die, overcome the idea that you're never going to see your loved ones again. And you have got to stay in the mindset of, I am not going to die today. And a lot of people, unfortunately, did not have that mindset, for a myriad of different reasons. They were never taught it. They never thought about it. Whatever the reason is, a lot of people didn't make it out of there because they froze from the fear, and the terror of the situation that was created. Also, something you said that we teach, that people have got to know, they've got to understand. You need to try and always be aware and always be vigilant. Know what's going on around you. Don't get caught up in the moment. A lot of people were there and had been probably drinking all day. That might have affected their reflexes, their decision making. Maybe, who knows, maybe the depressant effect of alcohol actually kept them calmer than they otherwise would have been, and maybe they did make the decision to get out of there if they could. But you said have a plan, and everybody should have a plan. I went to a country music concert in Utah with my ex-girlfriend and her family, and when we got there, I stopped everybody, and I right inside the front entrance of the venue, and said, okay, look, here's the venue entrance, there's the parking lot, there's the entrance actually into where everything's taking place. Let's find a meeting point. If something happens, please be aware of the entrances and exits, any kind of columns or anything thick that you can take cover. But the point was, we created a plan, and it's not something that people just do naturally, but it's something that people need to begin doing naturally, because unfortunately in the world that we live in, this is something that is necessary and may literally save our lives. So I had the opportunity to meet Nick and his wife, and one of the other A.L.I.V.E in-person programs I did, I met another survivor, and they all kind of had the same, they got out of there because they decided that they were going to live that day. Now, not everybody that makes that decision will, because we don't know where those bullets are going to fly. But many of the people who did nothing because they didn't know, they just simply did not know what to do, or they did not have the confidence or the knowledge of the training to feel the confidence to go, okay, I'm going to do something, stayed in a mass of people that dove on the ground and just laid there waiting for it to be over, and ended up losing their lives. So I think that's a very powerful message. The mindset of, I'm not going to die today, is very, very powerful. Now, you have seen, because this is the A.L.I.V.E podcast, I would like to circle back around and get some feedback from you. You have seen the A.L.I.V.E presentation, and because you've been in the security industry for 24 years, you've got a situational awareness mentality. You've got a security mindset and a survival mindset. After seeing the A.L.I.V.E presentation, and I think you've seen other active shooter survival programs, and all training is good unless it's bad, but training in this situation is so necessary. What would you say, or would you say that that the training, mine or anybody else's, if somebody did not have your experience level, how would that affect their ability to survive, their mindset, or how they would have reacted differently in this situation had they had that kind of training?
Well, I can tell you right now, I mean, even though I've been in the industry for 24 years, nothing prepares you for the real thing. Like I've done, like I said, trainings and participated in actual live demonstrations and live scenario training with active shooter. And, you know, you hear run, hide, fight, run, hide, fight, run, hide, fight, or you hear your program A.L.I.V.E or just survive or whatever it is that you want to talk about. But nobody knows what's going to happen until you're in that situation. I look back on it, it's been 2 years. I could have done 10 things different. But we never will know if those 10 things that I could have done different would have changed the outcome of me being here today. Not knowing where the shooter was, my thoughts were, if we run, we die. If we were in an open field, so to find cover was limited. There were, under the stage, there was a sound area, people were hiding in porta potties. Where we had K-rail in front of us and to the side of us. There wasn't a whole lot of cover or concealment. So at that moment, knowing what I know from all my other trainings, we should have ran, we should have been doing zigzag patterns, we should have separated and had a meetup point, or we should have gone to the nearest cover we could find and try to conceal ourselves under the stage or someplace. But I don't think that if your average citizen, civilian with zero knowledge of any of this, I think that they freeze. I think that they don't know what to do, and they're going to do nothing and become potentially a target. You said something about the alcohol, and it was kind of funny because we see videos of people who were drinking, and we see guys just standing there holding up their beers, drinking while this thing is happening. I think there's a video and a picture of a guy who's actually like flipping off Mandalay Bay, the area where it's coming from, while he's drinking a beer. I mean, not smart. He survived, luckily. But for me, we've been drinking all day too. And at that moment, I got real sober, real fast. The adrenaline took over, right? Afterwards, when we finally were able to catch our breaths, I wanted to puke. I was so sick from the adrenaline. I think, Mike, to your point, training for the real thing is all you can hope for. Training, doing it over and over again, going to classes so that you have that mindset. I know if it ever happened again, God forbid it ever happens to me again in that situation, I know there's probably, like I said, 10 things I would do differently. just from rethinking it.
So clearly, preparing for the worst and practicing and exercising and training certainly gives the average person or gives that person an advantage, but you just don't know until you're actually in it how you're going to react, what you're going to be thinking. And still, even with all the training in the world, there is an element of, I don't want to say luck, but you may end up catching a bullet doing what you're supposed to do, simply because there's so many bullets flying. And so you said the average, the civilian or whatever. So I just want to make sure that, I'm clear. It is your impression clearly that anybody who, if somebody didn't have the training, is it fair to say that you believe would certainly have a disadvantage because, hopefully that training will kick in, if nothing else, to occupy your mind on survival rather than dying and not seeing your loved ones again. So
yeah,
I think, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think you look at, let's take Nick for an example, and Nick's actions. Nick's a Marine, been trained, been to, war zones. His reaction to that situation was assess the situation. Okay. And fireworks.
Can you back up and repeat that? You broke up for just a second. You said Nick assessed the situation.
He had assessed the situation. He immediately knew the difference between gunfire and fireworks. And that's when he said, in his mind, he said, I'm running that direction towards the gunfire. We asked him after the fact, why did you do that? And he said, because there was a threat and I was going to take out the threat. He's the sheepdog or whatever you call it. I think sheepdog, Mike. Yeah. He knew in his mind that he was going to do whatever it took to take out the threat. But he didn't think about anybody else, right? And that's fine. That's fine. But for me, I was like, I'm protecting the people that I know and love that are around me right now. And I'm going to protect them because I'm a protector.
Yeah.
Chose to do what I did by keeping them on the ground, keeping them down, trying to get Tammy to get off the phone so she wouldn't make any noise, trying to calm the situation down while Nick was doing what he needed to do. And ultimately, we got back together and we were able to leave together, and we all survived. But I think that you go back to the training aspect. Nick was trained to do those types of things. He was trained to do that.
Yeah, that's a great illustration of training and the type of training and the level of training. So his training kicked in after being a combat Marine in a war zone. His training was eliminate the threat, which frankly, in his squad of men, in his unit on the ground with bullets flying, that would have been all of their training. And who knows, it's possible if you had not been there to take care of the ladies, he may have stayed with them. He knew, acting, in a team like Marines do and are trained, okay, this is being held down and the girls are being protected. So he then felt safe and comfortable going after the threat. But that is a very interesting illustration of the different types of training. And, and we know that there's sheep, there's wolves, and there's sheepdogs. And they all exist, and there's nothing wrong with being a sheep. That comes from personality types. We know the different 4 different personality types. Maybe the training, how you're brought up and that sort of thing. And thank goodness for sheep. But it's also good to know that there are sheepdogs, because And we've seen that in other active shooter scenarios where somebody has just instinctively gone towards the gunfire, has gone towards the threat to try and eliminate it. So, you know, certainly that is a very important element to have in society, to have the sheepdogs out there. And that would probably, because of, you know, the four of us, because of our training experience, that's probably how we would lean towards that situation. I have to say, I probably would have reacted the way you did. I probably would have, my primary concern, because I was not in combat, my training would have kicked in, and that would have been to protect myself and the people I'm with and try and get them out of there. So again, that just goes back to training. So, you know, what would you say to the viewers? What would be your key takeaways from this situation for the average person, maybe that has not had this training or has had limited training? You know, what would you tell them? Your takeaways, the lessons learned from this situation would be?
Well, first of all, I think you have to have the mindset of this could happen at any time, anywhere. The people who are masked, or they live in a box, or they put, you know, blinders on to say, well, I live in XYZ city, the safest city in America, or and this is never going to happen to me, or this only happens in certain areas of the world. I think that those people need a reality check. And I've heard it on your podcast many times, Michael, that these events are happening more and more frequently. The idea that we're moving away from active shooter now to active intruder or active killer is more prevalent. I've seen recent reports of people being stabbed, multiple people dying from being stabbed. So I don't think anybody is safe. That's number one. Number two, I think that wherever you go, wherever your situation is, that you should be hyper vigilant, be aware, see something, say something. Something doesn't look right, the hair on the back of your neck goes up, you get goosebumps, that feeling in your stomach tightens up, tell somebody. We hear stories of people saying after the fact, oh, well, I saw that person with a backpack walking down. Or, you know, we heard some chatter, but we didn't do anything because we didn't want to say anything or scare anybody. See something, say something. I know it's a cliche, but it could save lives. And the third thing I will say is you got to know what you're going to do in that situation. Even if you don't think about it ever happening to you, you've got to dissect it and go, okay, I'm here. Look around. Where's my cover? Where's my exits? Do I have my cell phone? Do I have my communication devices that I'm going to communicate with my family and friends? And if the shit hits the fan, what am I doing? And you know, that to me is the biggest takeaway that I can provide, besides obviously training and education and that type of thing, but just on the surface, those three things.
Yeah, well, those are excellent points. And it's, I mean, I'm glad you're stating those things, and it actually, it's very gratifying to me because all of those points are covered in the A.L.I.V.E training. And in fact, the first chapter in my book is titled "It Won't Happen to Me." And I talk about the danger of that mentality, of that attitude, of that living in denial, because we have found that it can happen anywhere at any time during the day. And, you know, I don't want to say that we're never safe, but the fact is there is no place that we are absolutely safe from a situation like this. So to your point, you're right. We do have to be prepared, and we do have to be diligent, because it can happen. The likelihood of it happening is not great. Let's face it. This is, in of the millions of people in this country, well, the billions of people around the world, because this is not a exclusive to the United States of America. It happens in places like Australia and New Zealand, clearly. It happens everywhere in the world. In China, more people die from being killed with edge weapons than people die from guns in America. So this is not a strictly gun issue. Unfortunately, it's a people issue. And as long as we've got people that believe that this is acceptable or will get them the kind of power and control that they're looking for and the notoriety that the media gives them, these things will continue to occur. I've stated before that I believe that we can curb this. We can start to mitigate these situations by, one, stating what these people are, and they're cowards. They're chicken shits that can't cope with their own lives, and so they decide that the power and control that they are lacking in their lives, they're going to get from spreading fear and terror in others. And obviously I'm very opinionated when it comes to the media glorifying them and putting their picture up and talking about what they had for breakfast and their lives. They know they're going to get power from that media attention and that literally celebrity status to some degree. So I don't mind saying their name and showing their picture, as long as we put them in the light that they are, and that is cowards. They're just bad. They're not glorified. They're not celebrity. They're shit. And so I like the idea of promoting their face and their name with the title or the tag of coward, because that's not what they want. They want to be raised up on a pedestal of being powerful, and cowards are not powerful. So I think those are great points, and I appreciate you sharing those with us. And like I always say, we don't care if you get the A.L.I.V.E training, though I think collectively believe that it is a very, very, very effective program, as long as you get some training, because the ignorance of not having that training, you will be stuck in a mindset of fear, terror, paralysis, not, I'm going to live today and go home to see the people that I love tonight. Lawrence, you got anything?
Yeah. Thank you, Matt. First, I wanted to say thanks for sharing that story. It's pretty powerful. Appreciate you having the vulnerability and the courage to talk about it. A couple of things. I took some notes while you were talking, and you guys have talked about this, but one of the things that stood out, you said it was a surprise. You didn't think it would happen to you. The other thing is that you had the impression at first that it was a crime, that it was happening like somewhere else to someone else, and didn't realize that the venue itself was the target, as opposed to it just being something happening, off to the side somewhere. The other thing that seemed to put you at ease to some extent was that there were police everywhere. You said that also. So I think that those right there go back to the whole mindset of that's mentioned in the book, where it can't happen to me, that sort of thing. The other thing I heard you say was that you didn't think it would last long, and that it was going to subside rather quickly. And a shelter-in-place strategy is pretty appropriate, especially since there's no cover nearby for something that is, it's happening over there to someone else, and it's going to go away right away. Unfortunately, none of those things were accurate at the time, but you have no way of knowing that till, hours, days, weeks later, when you find out more information about the event. I really like your attitude. You said to yourself, I wasn't going to die on that ground. Like you and the A.L.I.V.E program goes back to that and teaches that, and teaches people to think about your loved ones and to think about your kids and your significant other, and to use that as a motivation to get out of the situation you're in, and to spur people to action. You mentioned that your friend was paralyzed and you had to lift her over the barricade. That's mentioned also in the A.L.I.V.E training, where in the evacuate process, where you look for other people that you can save along the way. You're absolutely evacuating yourself. You're moving out of there, but you're looking for people that you can save along the way. And it's really great that you had the thought to stay with the people you were with and take care of them and protect them and to care for them. Nick, your buddy Nick had other plans. I did want to touch on that, is his assessment, just from hearing this story from the first time from you, in the A.L.I.V.E program assesses the first step. And Nick's assessment did not take very long. And he, like you said, he ran towards the gunfire. So he jumped right to the V in A.L.I.V.E, into violence, and looking for an opportunity to eliminate the threat. And I want to point that out, even without any sort of weapon, or, I mean, you either are a weapon or you make a weapon as you go or something like that. But he wasn't, he's going to figure that out as he went. So that's pretty cool. But it really takes a team, and it'd be great if, like Michael mentioned, when he and his friends and whatnot went to a concert, they kind of got together and had a powwow and made a plan ahead of time and said, okay, if something happens, I'm going to go after the threat, and you take care of the girls, and and then we'll meet over here, and that sort of thing. You guys didn't do that stuff, but it worked out anyway in terms of that.
I'll bet he does it in the future.
I bet he does it in the future.
Absolutely.
I bet he does it when he goes to get coffee now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. There's already been instances where I just don't feel right in a situation. I don't have a good feeling, and I have to excuse myself from the environment. I have to walk away. I have to collect myself, because it's real. The post-traumatic stress is real, and it happens when I hear cars backfiring, or I hear fireworks on the 4th of July, or if something drops near me, I still have a reaction. It's not a great way to live your life, but it's a reality, unfortunately. But that's how I have to live now. Is not in fear. I'm not living in fear, so I will not allow that to happen. But I'm living with a sense of my surroundings, a sense of my awareness of what's happening around me, and being vigilant. And so that comes with the territory of being involved in something like this. But that's why,
it's a painful, horrible lesson to learn that way, unfortunately. Before I go to Mark, I want to bring up the fact that this incident happened. It lasted exactly 10 minutes. And my book is called 10 Minutes to Live, Surviving an Active Shooter Using A.L.I.V.E. And the reason it's called that is because that and Virginia Tech and I can't remember one other one in the last year or so with the highest body counts lasted 10 minutes. So the longest that 99% of these events have lasted is 10 minutes or less. So it's so important, and what we teach in the A.L.I.V.E program is your mindset needs to be, okay, this thing will likely last less than 69% last less than 5 minutes, but this thing will not last longer than 10 minutes. So we teach people to focus on an endpoint, on the fact that it will be over soon. So you're focusing on, it's lasted 3 minutes. It's getting less and less. My chances of survival are getting greater every minute that ticks by.
Right.
So the mindset is focused on an endpoint, not death. And the survival mindset in its essence is being focused on survival rather than being, hyper focused or distracted or enveloped with the idea that you're going to die. And that just goes, that's such a simple thing for people to shift their mindset with, even subconsciously, just going, wait a minute. The instructor of that course said it won't last longer than 10 minutes. The instructor of that course said focus on the end point of it being over, not of the fact that you're in it right now and you're going to die because of it. And so, that's just one of the messages that's in the program and in the book that I want everybody, all the viewers, to take away is focus on it being over and getting to that point, not being in it and dying. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, Matt, first off, I'm really happy that you joined us today. I appreciate your raw feelings. I appreciate you. We don't want to see anyone have to go what you went through. And I'm glad you're here to tell us about it. And a lot of what you say certainly validates what Mike has written about in his book. And I really appreciate your feedback. There's a couple takeaways I have, and I just want to go through this short list. Things that you said really struck me. Number one was I wasn't going to die. You said be aware, be vigilant. 58 don't have a voice today. You wanted to have a voice being here today for those 58. Love wins, survivors win together. You said we run, we die. I thought that was interesting. Cover was limited. So one thing that I'm really curious about, what was your body going through physically? What were you experiencing? Your vision, your muscles, your strength, your voice. What physiological aspects can you share with us that might be different from the norm?
Good question, Mark.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I can tell you initially I was tense. I had that adrenaline where your heart is racing and so your breathing is very heavy. And I was trying to be still, be quiet. So again, our mind was, this is happening right behind us. Something's happening around us. And if I move, if I make a sound, if I bring attention to myself, I'm a target. But my body was so tight and tense, and I couldn't. And that's where when Tammy was on the phone and she's hysterical and she's talking to her son about what's happening and she's telling him there's a shooting and I love you, and she's going through this whole thing with her son. I'm trying to tell her, be quiet, just get down, be quiet, because I didn't want to draw attention to ourselves. I can tell you that I had so much awareness of sound, and I don't know how to explain it because it's hard to describe it, but it was so loud. Everything was magnified by 10. The sounds of the bullets. I could remember the tinging, the ting, 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 ting from the ground and the rails and the and the stage, you hear the popping sound, so you know that that's gunfire. But then the after effect is so magnified in my ears. I had to cover my ears at one point because I could feel what I thought was bullets grazing my head because it was so loud. I was sure that it was happening right behind me, that this was coming from somebody standing above me, pointing downwards. The part of jumping over the fence and crawling to safety and running, you just have this adrenaline of strength and movement that I could literally pick up Tammy from a dead standing position, picking her up and pulling her over the rail, which, you know, I could probably do anyways, but at that moment, it was just like it was nothing. I just wanted her to get over the rail. It wasn't until a couple of days after I got home that I was actually able to settle my stomach, because I had so much nerves and anxiety and fear still going through my body. When we left Las Vegas that morning at 8 a.m. on a flight. We were released at 6:30. We went back to our hotel room. We got our bags and we went right immediately to the airport Monday morning. I can't tell you how I got to the airport. I can tell you I fell asleep on the plane, but I don't know when we took off. I don't know when we landed. When we arrived at San Diego Airport, there was news reporters right outside of the terminal. And they came up to me and Tammy and they wanted to ask us questions about Route 91. And I was in such a fog, in such a daze, I couldn't even answer a question. They turned to Tammy and they were asking Tammy questions about something that happened with the headliner and them turning the lights on in the middle of the shooting, and did they think that it was his fault? And I mean, it was just, these questions were so stupid to ask, but we were such in a fog and a daze. I don't even remember what she answered or how she answered. I think I said to them, like, you got to be crazy, like, get out of here, like, what are you leave us alone. But it took me a couple of days to kind of finally just settle myself from the adrenaline and the fear and the emotions.
Matt, I want to go back to something you said that is so incredibly important. When you talked about your physical reaction and your senses became acute and your strength was like superhuman almost, I think it's so important to talk about that, because the listeners, viewers, anybody that takes if they don't ever take the training, at least they need to remember this. Their body, being the most amazing complex machine on earth, when it reacts, it becomes incredibly powerful because it goes into survival mode. I want people to take away from this and remember that they will have the ability physically, with the will, if they choose, to do whatever is necessary to survive this situation. So I want this to empower them, knowing that they will have suddenly incredible senses and incredible strength. So, I want them to have the confidence of knowing their body will do what is necessary to survive. They just need to make sure that their mind is in the right place to use that enhanced ability and senses to survive. So again, this goes back to focusing on what you said. I'm not going to die today, and I know that my body is going to be there for me to do what is necessary. I just need to make sure that my mind is there to do with my body what it needs to survive this situation.
Michael, could I ask one last question?
Of course.
Matt, if you were to go to another concert, what would you do differently?
Great question.
Well, I've been to other concerts.
What would you do?
I've been to other concerts. I've been to other events recently, and shortly after the event, we went to other venues and other concerts. And the first thing we do is we identify where do we want to stand, or where do we want to go, and are we going to be in a large group where we can't get out? Are we going to stay in the back area? We talked about, trying to get in a position to where we would be the first ones to leave, to be able to get out fast, not trying to be in the middle of the group, not trying to be as close to the stage as possible, so that we were kind of like pinned in there. We actually at one point took a position of on a balcony. We went to a balcony area so that we were above the venue, just because we wanted to have that extra advantage of seeing everything. But even in a large event, we went to Stagecoach as a group. The people that we were with at Route 91, we went to Stagecoach together. And there were times at Stagecoach where we had to walk away from a venue, from an area, from a stage area, because it was overcrowded. We didn't feel safe. We had that feeling something wasn't right. And we just said, okay, we'll miss this one and we'll move on to something else. And so that's what we did. Again, not fear. It wasn't fear. I don't want people to misunderstand that it wasn't fear that we said we're not going to go do that. It was just that feeling of knowing, I'm not comfortable in this environment, and I want to protect myself and the people that I love. And so we're going to do something different.
So you then had a plan.
Exactly.
You were situationally aware. You created a plan, even if it was just at that very moment when you felt uncomfortable. You're like, okay, our plan is to move away from this because we're not comfortable with it. And the takeaway from that should be, don't wait to go through this horrendous event hoping to survive, having to deal with PTSD and all of the effects afterwards, and the mental shit that you have been going through for the last 2 years. Be prepared, have a security mindset, which is previous to the event beginning, and have a plan and talk about what you're going to do and educate the people with you, because they may not have had the training or the experience you have. But be aware. Don't just focus on getting to the very center of right in front of the stage, where if something like this happens, you're stuck. There's, you got 22,000 people surrounding you. There's nothing you can do. You can't move until they move. So now you're at the mercy of what they do. So I think that's a really great takeaway from you, Matt, is to have a plan and be aware always. Well, Matt, I really want to thank you for being on the show, for being vulnerable. I respect, your vulnerability, and I honestly, the camera was on you, not me, but I was getting a little choked up myself, and so I had to wipe my eyes a couple times, and I feel the energy and the emotion that you were feeling, and I'm sorry that you had to go through that, but very happy and grateful that taking from your horrible experience, hopefully we can educate other people to get the training that they need somewhere to help them survive a situation like this. And also, you made several great points that are takeaways, that it's almost like a touch of a little bit of training, because now they've learned some things that they would not have known prior to that. So I want to thank you very, very much, and I'm sure today is going to be a rather emotional day for you. So thank you for spending some of that day with us. Mark and Lawrence, obviously, as usual, I want to thank you for being with me here on the A.L.I.V.E. podcast.
Michael,
Yeah.
I want to remind everybody listening that we have our next instructor course coming up on October 25th and 26th.
Correct.
So go to the website and get some more information. Feel free to call A.L.I.V.E and speak to us about the program, and we can get you signed up for that.
Yes.
And
Thank
you
for
can
that.
become an A.L.I.V.E certified instructor.
Yep. So the certified instructor course is a 2-day, usually 10-hour a day intensive training course on how to become an A.L.I.V.E instructor. It is a trademarked, patented course. So this is the only way to teach the A.L.I.V.E program is to go through the instructor training. It is on October 25th and 26th. You can find information and sign up or get more information at activeshootersurvivaltraining.com. Also, if anybody's interested in the book, which is a survival manual, it's the A.L.I.V.E program, but with extra stuff, and you can read or you can get the Kindle version. You can go to either Amazon or the website activeshootersurvivaltraining.com to order the book. Or there's an online training program now, which is the A.L.I.V.E program. The extended all-inclusive version is about 3 hours long. I've also created an accelerated version, which is about an hour, because there's several people that said, I can't take 3 hours out of my day to do this, which is unfortunate because it's a priority. However, any training is better than no training. So you can get the accelerated version or the complete A.L.I.V.E training online, also at activeshootersurvivaltraining.com. Or if anybody's interested in booking an in-person training, that can be done at that website too. So guys, thank you again very much for your time and your great knowledge, great questions. Matt, thank you again for telling us your story. We definitely felt it on our end. And we
Can I
will
say
do
one?
that.
Can I
Yes,
say
sir,
something
please.
before everyone leaves? Mike, thank you so much for the invite and having me come on and talk about this today. Just want to say something that everyone should just go home and hug the ones that they love a little bit tighter today. Remember the 58 that can't be here. Remember the 22,000 other survivors like me who are dealing with this every day. Be a little bit kinder. Don't let fear win. And just be safe.
That's a great message, Matt. Thank you. Thank you very much. Guys, thank you very much. And we will all have Matt, you, and everybody else that was there that survived or didn't in our thoughts today. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.